The godswood of Winterfell was ancient, long before the Andals came with their axes and their bright, brittle gods. The old gods dwelled in its roots and branches, in the silent snow that crusted the sacred ground and the blood-red eyes of the heart tree. It was here, in the shivering black of deepest night, that Melisandre moved as a shadow among the trees, her cloak of crimson and sable billowing with each step. The war was lost, some whispered. Lost even before it had truly begun. The bastard of Winterfell had been cast down. The dead walked from the frost-bound rivers of the far north to the gates of the castle, their icy breath a promise of oblivion. But Melisandre had seen the truth in her flames. Hope is a fire easily snuffed, but never truly quenched. She knelt beneath the heart tree, her red eyes reflecting the moonlight, and listened to the hush of the godswood, the groan of ancient wood, the flutter of a raven's wings, the distant howl of a lone deer wolf. She placed her bare hand to the snow and felt the pulse of magic, old as the world. Beneath the shadow, a wolf still howls. She whispered, breath curling in the cold, "Let her rise, O our Lord. Let her return, and let all darkness tremble before her light." The ground at the base of the heart tree had been disturbed. Few still alive in Winterfell's halls remembered the tales of Lyanna Stark, wolf-blooded, wild-hearted, a girl of laughter and swords and storms. Fewer still remembered where her bones had been laid to rest. Eddard Stark had chosen a spot deep in the earth, where the roots ran thick and the heart tree's gaze never faltered. Melisandre drew her blade and pressed it to her palm. Blood spilled on the snow, bright as rubies. She chanted in the tongue of Ashai, the words rasping like fire in the throat. Flames danced behind her eyes, showing her glimpses, long dark hair, blue-gray eyes shining with tears, a tower bathed in moonlight, a promise broken on the wind. The air thickened, trembling with power. The snow melted in a circle around Melisandre, revealing black, loamy earth. The ground shivered as the roots of the heart tree curled tighter, holding something precious. "Life for death, death for life," she intoned, voice rising above the cold. "By the light of the Lord of Fire, by the weeping of the old gods, by the blood of the wolf and the promise of the dawn, return." The moon slid behind a cloud. The world seemed to hold its breath. A hand, slender, pale as milk, streaked with grave dirt, burst from the ground, clawing at the air. Melisandre did not flinch. She caught the hand in her own, warmth flowing from her flesh into cold, dead fingers. The earth heaved and parted. Lyanna Stark, last daughter of Winterfell, rose from the grave, naked as the day she was born, her hair streaming behind her in a dark banner. Her eyes fluttered open, gray, fierce, dazed, and found the priestess. "Who?" Lyanna gasped, voice hoarse as wind through a crypt. "I am Melisandre of Ashai. You are needed, wolf girl. Rise. The dawn must come, and the darkness is near." Lyanna trembled, skin gleaming in the moonlight, bloodless but unbowed. She knelt, shivering, as Melisandre wrapped her in a cloak of red and sable. Lyanna's lips moved in silent prayer, to the old gods, to her brothers, to a world that was gone. Memories came in a flood. Horses galloping across the barrows, laughter echoing in the halls, the tower of joy and the scent of roses, cold steel at her throat, promises whispered in the dark. She remembered dying, the last ragged breath, the taste of blood in the shape of her son's face. Her son lost to her, hidden by duty and fear. Now she was returned. Melisandre led her from the godswood to the crypts, where the cold was deeper and the shadows longer. The torches sputtered as they passed, the flames bowing to the sorceress's will. Statues of the Stark dead lined the walls, gray kings and queens, their stone eyes watching as Lyanna walked among them once more. A bundle of clothes awaited her. Black wool, heavy boots, a direwolf sigil clasp for her cloak. Melisandre's magic had preserved them, anticipating this moment. Lyanna dressed in silence, hands shaking. The wolf's head was cold against her throat, but the touch steadied her. She pressed her forehead to the statue of her father, Rickard Stark, and closed her eyes. "Forgive me," she whispered. "Forgive what I have become." The castle above was a tomb, banners torn, bodies lying where they fell. The living huddled in the great hall, afraid to meet her eyes as she strode past, Melisandre at her shoulder. Arya Stark was there, blood on her cheek, sword in her hand, gaze fierce as any she-wolf. Arya stared, mouth falling open, and for a moment the room was utterly silent. "Who?" Arya began, voice cracking. "Your aunt?" Melisandre replied. "Lyanna Stark." The wolf returned to Winterfell. "She comes to lead you. Will you follow her?" Arya's sword fell to her side. Her eyes, sharp as ever, darted between Melisandre and the woman who looked like the songs and the paintings. A wild beauty, long dark hair, fierce eyes full of sorrow and longing. "Prove it," Arya demanded, her voice steady now. "Say something only a Stark would know." Lyanna smiled, tired and brittle, but a true smile nonetheless. "When you were little, you hid in the crypts and spied on your brothers at swordplay. Bran always found you. He was good at hiding. You hated the lady's lessons more than anything, and once you stole a horse and rode to the edge of the Wolfswood just to see if you could. That's what they say in the songs. But I know another secret. When you were 7, you stole a pie from the kitchens and blamed Rickon. You got away with it, but—" Arya's face twisted with a strange, desperate hope. "It's you. You're real." Lyanna opened her arms, and Arya ran to her, heedless of the stairs, sobbing into her aunt's cloak. The hall erupted into noise. Shouts, prayers, the babble of frightened men and women clinging to a miracle. The dead had broken the gates of Winterfell, and yet here was Lyanna Stark, returned from the grave, sword and sorrow in her eyes. Davos Seaworth limped forward, jaw clenched. "The last time I saw a dead man walk, it was the bastard of Winterfell himself. Are you truly Lyanna Stark?" Lyanna met his gaze, cool and proud. "I am. My father was Rickard. My brothers were Brandon, Eddard, and Benjen. I was the Wolfmaid of the North, and I was promised to Robert Baratheon, but my heart was never tamed." Davos bowed, as if before a queen. "Then the gods have answered us." Melisandre's red eyes gleamed. "Not gods. The Lord of Light. She is Azor Ahai returned, the sword in the darkness, the fire that burns against the cold. Bewain." Lyanna looked at Melisandre, fear flickering in her eyes. "I am no sword. I am no savior." "You will be," Melisandre replied, voice soft as snow, "or all is lost." Outside, the dead pressed at the gates, their moans echoing across the snow. Ghost, Jon Snow's Deerwolf, prowled the yard, fur bristling, eyes fixed on the doors as if he sensed a change in the world. In the days that followed, the living watched Lyanna with awe and dread. She moved through the castle like a dream, her face familiar and yet changed. Paler, colder, a beauty tinged with the shadow of death. She walked the battlements, spoke with the defenders, listened to their fears. She was drawn to the Godswood each night, sitting beneath the heart tree, the snow swirling around her. Arya came to her often, full of questions, desperate to know everything, about her father, about the past, about the brother she barely remembered. "He's alive," Arya said one night, voice fierce. "Jon, your son. Did you know?" Lyanna's eyes filled with tears she could not shed. "I knew. Eddard took him. I made him promise. Do you want to see him again?" Lyanna looked up at the moon, heart aching. "More than anything. But there is work to do. If I fail, there will be nothing left for any of us." Arya nodded, unshed tears glimmering in her eyes. "We'll win. We're Starks." The war for Dawn was not fought with swords alone. Lyanna listened to Davos, to the maesters, to Arya's whispered tales of faceless men and magic from the east. She watched Melisandre with wary eyes, unsure if the Red Priestess was a savior or a puppet master. The North rallied around her. Old lords came from their keeps, answering the call of the Wolf Maiden returned. The Mormonts sent what few men remained. The Umbers, broken but proud, pledged their axes. Even the wildlings came, following Tormund, Giantsbane, and Ghost. their loyalty won by the memory of a girl who had loved the wild. Lyanna took up her father's sword, Ice, reforged after Ramses' defeat, and wore her brother's cloak. She spoke in the great hall, voice ringing with steel and sorrow. "We stand at the end of the world," she told them. "The dead come for us all. I died once, but I was not finished. The old gods and the new have given me a second chance, to fight, to lead, to protect those I love. I will not squander it. Stand with me, and let us show the dead that the North remembers." They cheered her, their voices rising like a storm. The days grew colder. The dead crept closer. The walls of Winterfell groaned beneath the weight of snow and sorrow. In the crypts, the dead stirred. Lyanna felt them in her dreams. Ancient kings and queens, brothers and sisters, a family that spanned centuries. They whispered to her in the dark, "You are not alone." Melisandre taught her to wield the fire within. How to call flames with a thought. How to bend shadows to her will. Lyanna's blood ran cold, but fire burned in her heart. One night, the moon vanished behind clouds. The dead breached the outer walls. The defenders fell back, fighting with sword and torch, the air thick with fear. Arya and Ghost fought at Lyanna's side, their blades slick with black blood, their faces lit by the glare of burning whites. In the chaos, the Night King came, riding a pale horse, his eyes blue as winter stars. He was death made flesh, a shadow that swallowed hope. Lyanna met him on the drawbridge, sword in hand, Melisandre at her side. The fire blazed in her palm, casting wild shadows across the snow. The Night King smiled, a thin, inhuman thing. He raised his sword. Lyanna raised hers, and the fire danced along the blade. Melisandre chanted, her voice rising in a language no man remembered. "Do you fear death, wolf girl?" the Night King asked, his voice a blade of ice. "I have died before," Lyanna replied, voice unbroken. "I am not afraid." They fought beneath the moonless sky, steel and fire against ice and shadow. The Night King's strength was inhuman, but Lyanna moved with the fury of a storm, the memory of 1,000 lost dreams driving her. She faltered once, the cold biting into her bones. Melisandre's hand found her shoulder, and warmth flowed into her, a river of fire, old as the world. The Night King lunged, his blade whistling. Lyanna caught it on her own, sparks flying. She stared into his eyes and saw nothing but hunger. "For my son," she whispered. "For my family. For the dawn." She drove her sword through the Night King's heart. Fire exploded from the wound, a burst of gold and scarlet, melting the ice from his veins. He screamed, a sound like the shattering of worlds. The dead froze. The whites collapsed, bones splintering, shadows fleeing before the fire. Lyanna fell to her knees, breath ragged. The fire within flickered, guttering. Melisandre knelt beside her, a gentle smile on her lips. "You have done what none before you could. The dawn is yours." The snow began to melt. The sky brightened, the first pale rays of sun glimmering on the horizon. Arya found Lyanna by the heart tree, tears streaming down her face. "It's over," Arya whispered. "You did it." Lyanna smiled, exhaustion written in every line. "We did it. The North remembers." She looked up at the sky, at the dawn breaking over the world, and knew that this was not an ending, but a beginning. A new age born from blood and sorrow, fire and ice. And somewhere, far away, a boy with gray eyes and the soul of a wolf looked to the east and felt the dawn in his bones, knowing that he was not alone. "Ah-K." Lyanna Stark's breaths were thin and shallow, as the first daylight spilled through Winterfell's broken windows, her fingers pressed to the dark, blood-crusted stone beneath the heart tree. The godswood was awash in a pallid golden glow. Snowdrifts melting into streams that ran with the ashes of the night. The air was sharper now, raw and new, as if every shadow had been purged by the fire she had unleashed. In the hush that followed the Night King's undoing, the world seemed both impossibly ancient and impossibly young. She looked down and saw her reflection in a shallow pool at the roots. For a moment, the face that stared back was not her own but a wolf's. Lean, wild eyes rimmed with silver. Then she blinked, and it was only Lyanna again, haggard and hollow-eyed, a lock of hair clinging to her brow with sweat. She heard movement at her back, boots crunching snow, the whimper of Ghost, Arya's footsteps light as a cat's. Arya knelt at her side, sliding her arm beneath Lyanna's shoulders. "Can you stand?" Lyanna nodded, even as she doubted her own strength. The fire within her had not gone out, but it guttered low, a banked ember. "Aye," she rasped, tasting blood. "For a Stark, always." Together they rose, Arya steadying her as she swayed. Melisandre stood in the clearing, her crimson robes clinging to her slender frame, red hair loosed by wind. The priestess' face was luminous, transformed by a wild joy, but there was a finality in her eyes. "It is done," Melisandre said softly. "The cold is broken. The Lord of Light will trouble this land no longer." Lyanna tried to laugh, but the sound came out hollow. "Then what are we now, in this new world? What becomes of the dead who walk again?" "You are needed still," Melisandre said. "The living do not know yet how to live with miracles." From the edge of the godswood, figures emerged. Davos Seaworth, with his battered onion knight stride, Joan's wolf ghost padding silent beside him, and behind them, the shattered survivors of Winterfell, Tormund Giantsbane. His beard matted with frozen blood, carried a wounded wildling boy in his arms, Gendry Baratheon. Face shadowed by grime, shouldered a half-broken spear. Even Lady Sansa moved among them, veiled in mourning black, but with a new steel in her eyes. Sansa's eyes went first to Lyanna, widening as she registered not just victory but survival. Something more than survival. "The Night King is dead. The Whites have fallen," Sansa said, as if testing the shape of those words for the first time. Lyanna nodded, her gaze drifting to the ruined ramparts, the scorched yard littered with bones and shards of ancient ice. "We have won at dawn," she whispered. "But what comes after?" Davos joined her at the tree, his gloved hand closing over her wrist. "What comes after is rebuilding," he said, as if by stating it, he could make it true. "But folk are scared. They saw the dead walk. They saw you, Lady Lyanna. They'll need a Stark to guide them. Or a miracle." Lyanna's jaw clenched. "I am neither ghost nor goddess. I am only Lyanna Stark, and my bones ache for the grave. But if Winterfell needs a Stark, then a Stark I shall be." Ghost nosed her palm, as if he understood. His red eyes met hers, and she felt something pass between them, a cold resolve. The sense that the line of wolves was not yet run. They moved as a company from the godswood, Lyanna at their center, Arya and Davos flanking her, Sansa and Tormund behind. Winterfell was a city of ruins, its towers scorched, gates battered from within and without, the courtyards strewn with the detritus of desperate battle. The survivors lined their passage, wildlings, Northmen, the broken sons of House Umber and House Mormont, even the battered banners of the Vale and Riverlands, their faces gaunt with exhaustion and awe. They saw Lyanna and fell silent, then began to kneel, one after another, as if an old habit had reawakened in the marrow of their bones. Lyanna hated the weight of their expectation, but she could not, would not, turn away. Davos spoke as they reached the great hall, now little more than a shell, its high windows shattered. "Let them see you. Let them hear you. Hope is a fragile thing, and it is yours to kindle." She ascended the steps, bracing herself against the banister, and turned to face the gathered crowd. "You all know me, or think you do," she began, her voice ringing clear despite her battered frame. "I am Lyanna Stark, and I died once for this world. I had been raised, not by my own desire, but by the will of powers I barely comprehend. I am no queen, nor sorceress, nor saint. I am only a woman of the North. But I know this. Winterfell stands because you fought, because you would not yield. The Night King is broken, his army gone to dust. But the living must live, and rebuild, and remember. Dum? Her words hung in the air, rippling through the assembly like a slow rising wind. She saw tears on Lady Mormont's cheeks, the tight-lipped hope in Gendry's jaw, the bruised gratitude in Sansa's eyes. Lyanna turned, gesturing to Arya. "This is my niece, Arya Stark. She has the heart of a wolf, and the courage of 100 men. She fought beside me. She will fight for you, if you let her." Arya blushed, but lifted her chin, eyes glinting with pride. Tormund barked a laugh, breaking the tension. And she fights dirty. She took down whites with nothing but a dagger and a snarl. The wildlings will follow her as they follow you, Lady Lyanna. Dow. The hall erupted into murmurs, the people beginning to believe. Davos stepped forward and raised his good hand. Winter is broken. The north endures. As if on cue, the clouds parted above, shafts of sunlight illuminating the battered flagstones. The people cheered. Hoarse, wild, desperate, but true. That night, the living feasted amid the ruins, toasting their dead, and their living lighting fires on every parapet. Lyanna wandered the halls, pausing at each pyre, each huddled knot of survivors. Children clung to her cloak, women wept in her arms, old men knelt to kiss her hand. She let them, for they needed a miracle, and for now, she could be that. She found Sansa alone in the solar, gazing out over the broken wall. Sansa looked older, the ghost of their father in her solemn features. "Do you resent me?" Lyanna asked, quiet as snowfall. Sansa smiled, brittle but kind. "No, I envy you. You got to sleep while the world burned, and now you wake when the fires are out." Lyanna laughed, surprised by the warmth of it. "It does not feel like waking. It feels like stumbling through a half-remembered dream." Sansa's hand closed over hers. "We need you. They need you. The North will follow your banner, but you must give them hope that this peace will last." Peace. Lyanna savored the word, as if it might dissolve on her tongue. "We have won a dawn, but winter will come again. It always does." Sansa nodded. "That's why we are Starks." Lyanna left her with that thought, descending into the bowels of the castle. She moved as a shadow, seeking the crypts, compelled by a hunger she could not name. She paused at the statue of Ned, her brother, and knelt. "You kept your promise, Ned," she whispered. "You kept my boy safe." She closed her eyes and, for the first time since her rebirth, let the tears come. They spilled silently down her cheeks, hot as summer rain. A whisper in the darkness startled her. Ghost, silent as the grave, slipped from the shadows, followed by Melisandre. "You grieve for what is lost," Melisandre said, kneeling beside her. "That is good. Grief is the price of love." Lyanna wiped her cheeks. "Will the fire always burn in me?" "For a time," the priestess said. "It will fade, as all things fade. But the spark remains to be kindled again if the world needs it. You are not immortal, Lyanna, but you are changed." They sat together in silence, two women bound by fate and fire. "Why did you choose me?" Lyanna asked finally. Melisandre's eyes glimmered in the torchlight. "Because you are a wolf, and because your son is the song of ice and fire. The dawn was always meant for your blood." "Then?" Lyanna shivered. "Will I see him again?" "If he survives," Melisandre replied. "The war for Dawn is won, but wars of men go on. He is in the south, hunted by those who fear his name." Lyanna rose, steel in her spine. "Then, I will find him." The days passed in a blur of rebuilding and remembrance. Ravens flew from Winterfell to every corner of the north, carrying word of the victory and of the miracle. Houses that had bent the knee to the Boltons or knelt to foreign kings now pledged anew to the Wolfmaid, the Lady of Dawn. Gifts arrived: a white horse from the Vale, rich furs from Bear Island, a blade of Valyrian steel from the distant east. With each dawn, the sun climbed higher. the world growing warmer. Hope tentatively rooting itself in the north. One evening, as a spring thaw set rivers free, a column of riders appeared on the King's Road. Lyanna stood on the walls, wind teasing her hair, watching their banners flutter in the fading light. At their head rode Jon Snow, his cloak tattered, face drawn with sorrow and battle, but his eyes alive with purpose. He dismounted, feet crunching on gravel, and stared up at her. For a moment, neither moved. Then Lyanna descended the steps, her heart pounding. He knelt before her, head bowed. "My lady, I heard tales. I did not dare hope." Lyanna knelt beside him and cupped his face. "My son," she said, voice trembling, "you have your father's stubbornness and your mother's pride." Jon's eyes brimmed with tears. "You... how?" She laughed, a sound full of joy and pain. "The world has changed, Jon. The dead have risen and been cast down. The North stands. Your home stands. I have been granted a second life. Will you claim your own?" Dandero. He pulled her into an embrace, and the North breathed a collective sigh. A mother and son, lost and found. The days that followed were full of new challenges. Southern lords arrived. Suspicious and frightened, Queen Daenerys came with her dragons, seeking allegiance and answers. The realm was fractured, faith shattered, alliances broken, old wounds bleeding anew. Lyanna met them all with iron courtesy and wolfish resolve. She received Daenerys in the Godswood, beneath the heart tree. "I have heard the songs of your beauty and your strength," Daenerys said, her voice both wary and warm. "They did not mention your return from the grave." Lyanna smiled. "The songs rarely tell the whole truth. You have dragons, your grace. I have only myself." "You have the North," Daenerys replied, eyes bright with curiosity. Lyanna nodded. "And I would keep it free, if I can." Daenerys regarded her, weighing something in her mind. "And if I asked you to kneel?" Lyanna met her gaze, unflinching. "I have knelt before death and been denied. I will not kneel again." Daenerys laughed, delighted. "Then we shall be friends, not enemies." An alliance was struck, not one of banners, but of mutual respect. Together, they rode beneath the walls, their retinues mingling, the people of the North whispering of queens and dragons and miracles. But not all were content. In the shadows, old hatreds festered. Lords from the South murmured that Lyanna's return was an abomination. Priests from the faith denounced her as a witch. Sel's words lingered at the edge of the wood, knives drawn, waiting for a sign of weakness. One night, as Lyanna slept, a vision so vivid she tasted the blood in her mouth, heard the cries of the dying, felt the cool stone beneath her back. She saw Rhaegar, beautiful and sad, his hand warm in hers. "You were the light in my darkness," he whispered. "You were always the dawn." She woke with tears on her cheeks, the memory burning. She found Jon in the yard, practicing with Arya. They moved like shadows, blades flashing in the morning sun. "Mother," Jon said, sheathing his sword as she approached. "You look troubled." Lyanna watched Arya, so fierce and wild, and thought of all she had lost and all she had found. "The world will not accept me easily," she said. "They fear what they do not understand." Jon's expression softened. "Let them fear. We have survived worse." Arya grinned, planting her sword in the dirt. "If they come for us, they'll find wolves, not lambs." Lyanna laughed, the sound ringing out clear and true. But that night, the shadows returned. A priest of the faith, emboldened by drink and the whispers of men, led a small company into the Godswood. Their torches cast wild, leaping shapes among the trees. They found Melisandre alone at the heart tree, her eyes reflecting the flames. "Witch!" The priest spat. "You have damned this land with your sorcery." Melisandre smiled, unafraid. "I have done what was needed." He raised his sword. "You will burn for your crimes." The men seized her, binding her wrists. But as they dragged her toward the fire, Lyanna appeared, Arya and Ghost at her heels. "Unhand her," Lyanna commanded. Her voice thunder. The priest sneered. "She is an abomination." "So are you." Arya's sword flashed, the point pressed to his throat. "Say that again." The men faltered, fear plain on their faces. Lyanna stepped forward, drawing herself up. "I am Lyanna Stark. I died for the North. I rose for the North. You will not harm her, nor anyone under my protection." The priest wavered, then dropped his sword. "Forgive me, my lady. We are afraid." Lyanna nodded. "So am I. But fear's no excuse for cruelty. The war is over, let it be done." She freed Melisandre, who bowed her head in thanks. Afterward, Lyanna sat alone beneath the heart tree, her heart heavy. Melisandre joined her, silent for a time. "I must leave," the Red Woman said at last. "My work here is done." Lyanna nodded, understanding. "Where will you go?" "Into the shadow, perhaps into death at last. But know this, when the world needs fire, it will find it in the blood of wolves." They embraced, and Melisandre vanished into the night. Seasons passed. The North healed. Crops grew. Children laughed. The scars of war faded, but Lyanna never forgot the price of dawn. She ruled as Lady of Winterfell, wise and fierce. Arya ranged far and wide, a ghost in the woods. Jon became Warden of the North, beloved by all. Sansa guided the realm with a sure hand, her counsel trusted by lords and small folk alike. And when the snows fell again, Lyanna would walk in the Godswood, her hand resting on the heart tree, and feel the fire within, a promise that as long as wolves walked the world, the darkness would never triumph. Some nights, when the wind howled and the stars blazed cold above, she would hear the whisper of her name in the trees, and know that the dawn was not hers alone, but belonged to all who refused to yield. Thus did the Wolf Maiden of Winterfell guide her people into the light, never forgetting that every dawn is born from the courage to endure the night. The slow green awakening of the North after the long night was neither clean nor easy. When the Night King's body dissolved into ash and bitter wind, the hearts of Winterfell's people could not, melt so quickly. Fear leaves stains that outlast any frost. Lyanna Stark felt those stains in every eye that lingered on her too long, in the uncertain hush that haunted each council meeting, in the way the youngest children startled at her approach, as if unsure whether she was truly alive. But the wolves were stubborn. Spring crept across the land, coaxing crocuses through churned earth, and with every sunrise, Lyanna forced herself to meet the day. She walked the battlements at dawn with Jon, the stones still cold underfoot, watching the mists recede from the fields and forests. Jon rarely spoke of the war, though its ghosts walked at his side as surely as hers. He told her about the years she had missed, of his childhood under Ned's shadow, of learning to ride with Robb, of the shame and silence that came with being the bastard no one would claim. He spoke of the Wall, the wild, cold terror of the first whites he killed, the fire that had kindled in him when all hope seemed lost. One morning, he pointed to a cluster of ravens on the Weirwood's highest branch, their black wings a sharp silhouette against the sky. "Do you remember the tales old Nan used to tell?" he asked. "How the first Stark spoke to ravens, and the trees whispered their secrets." Lyanna's lips twitched. "Nan always liked to frighten us. But I do remember. I used to imagine I'd find a way to speak with the trees myself. When I was small, they never answered. Not until the night I died. Then now." Jon glanced at her sidelong, as if still doubting that she was truly his mother. "And what do they say now?" She rested her hand on the cold stone. "That even the oldest roots must wake, if they want to see another spring." Jon nodded, understanding. "Then let's wake them." They worked together, he and Lyanna, sending riders south and west to gather survivors and scattered kin. House Mormont had been nearly destroyed, but young survivors clung on in Bear Island's battered keep. The Umber's halls at last hearth were little more than scorched stone, but stubborn kinsmen began to rebuild. Even White Harbor, battered and wary, sent ships full of timber and grain upriver, answering the call of wolf banners on the breeze. Arya rode out at their side, ranging as far as the neck, her reputation growing with every tale told at a fireside. In every village where she stopped, she showed the scars on her arms, the steel in her eyes. She told them that Lyanna Stark had returned, that Jon Snow was warden, that the wolves of Winterfell would keep them safe. They listened, and they came. At first, the new council met in a corner of the ruined Great Hall. Patches of roof open to sky and rain. Davos Seaworth set his battered chair at Lyanna's right hand. The rough men of the north scattered around the table. Lord Glover with his heavy beard and heavier brow, Lady Sansa regal and careful, Gendry Baratheon gruff and blunt, and Tormund Giantsbane who'd refused to return north of the wall. Too charmed by the prospect of southern mead and Arya's sly smiles. On a mild day with the scent of pine drifting in from the woods, Lyanna called the first true council since her resurrection. The sunlight caught dust motes as she leaned forward, hands braced on the table's battered surface. "We are not whole," she said, voice low but sure, "but we are alive. The Boltons are gone, the dead have fallen, and the world is ours to reclaim. Yet we cannot simply rebuild what was. The South will not forget this miracle. The faith calls me abomination. Some southern lords whisper that Jon is a threat. We have enemies still, and friends in short supply. How do we endure?" Lord Glover bristled. "The North endures as it always has. We hold our lands. We trust our own. Let the South squabble. We have our queen." Sansa spoke, careful and cold. "We have allies, or could. Queen Daenerys, House Arryn, even the Riverlands. But we must be careful. The world is not ready for another Stark king or queen. And the faith will not let the tale of your resurrection fade. Now," Davos cleared his throat, "best be clever. Let them see you as the North's shield, not its sword. Make peace with the South. Show them we seek only to keep what's ours." Lyanna looked from face to face, weighing each word. At last, she nodded. "Then that is what we shall do. We will host a great moot. Let every lord and lady, every village head and wildling chief come to Winterfell. We will swear again our peace with the South, and the South will see that we are not monsters, but men and women who fought for the dawn." Arya grinned, knife flashing in her fingers. "And if any come seeking trouble?" Lyanna allowed herself a smile. "Then the North remembers how to bite." Over the next weeks, banners gathered from across the North and beyond. The towers and halls filled with laughter and tension in equal measure. Mormonts, Umbers, Karstarks, wildlings from the Vens, even a handful of Ironborn, battered, uncertain, but seeking a new fate in the shattered world. The moot was set in the Godswood, where the old gods watched, and the wind smelled of snow and new grass. Lyanna stood at the heart tree, Jon and Arya at her side, Sansa just behind, her hair a shining banner in the morning light. Gendry, now Lord of Storm's End by Daenerys' decree, arrived in a battered cloak, his eyes darting around the weirwood's blood-red leaves. "I don't know that your gods like Southerners," he whispered. Arya smirked. "They don't like anyone, but they'll let you be." The air was thick with anticipation. Lords and ladies took their places, banners fluttering like wings. Melisandre was gone. Some said she'd vanished on the wind, others that she'd walked into the night and never been seen again. But her presence haunted them all. A fire flickering at the edge of every shadow. Lyanna spoke, her voice carrying through the trees. "You have all come for many reasons. Some for hope, some for fear. Some because you remember a time before winter. I am Lyanna Stark, daughter of Winterfell, called from the grave to fight for this world. Some call me witch, some call me queen. But I say only this: the North stands, and the North will endure. Not because of magic, but because of each of you." The lords listened, some nodding, some skeptical. Jon stepped forward, his face hard with memory. We have bled for this land. My mother, Lady Lyanna, died to give us this chance. We ask only what is ours. The North keeps its old gods, its old ways, but we will not march south. We will send our grain, our timber, our steel, and we will defend our borders. Let no one say the North seeks war. Nine see. There was grumbling from some wildling chieftains, but Tormund quelled it with a roar. Let the Southerners come if they dare. I'll show them how a real man fights. Lyanna raised a hand. We will fight if we must, but not for power, only for peace. Let the world remember that the wolves of Winterfell keep their word. By sunset, oaths were sworn anew. Old grudges set aside for now. New alliances inked with fire and blood. As the feast began, Sansa drew Lyanna aside. That was well done, she murmured. But peace is like a spring thaw. It can turn to flood if we are not careful. Lyanna touched her arm. I will be careful. And I have you. Down. They watched together as Arya led the children of the North in a wild dance around the fires, Jon laughing for the first time in weeks. Music rose, carried on the warm breeze. For a moment, Lyanna allowed herself to believe that hope might last. But even in peace, darkness lingers. That night, a raven arrived from Old Town, its wings ragged, its message sealed with the mark of the High Septon. The letter was cold, impersonal, a demand cloaked in prayer. Lyanna Stark was to present herself at the Great Sept of Baelor, to answer charges of necromancy and unnatural resurrection before the eyes of the gods and the realm. Failure to appear would mark her and all the North as traitors and heretics. The council met at once, the mood grim. They mean to shame us, Sansa said, eyes narrowed. Or worse, the faith's reach is long. Davos shook his head. They would see you burn, my lady. It's not justice they want, it's a lesson. Arya's voice was icy. Let them come. I'll cut their throats while they sleep. Lyanna looked from Jon to Sansa to Arya. Her own blood arrayed before her like chessmen. If I run, I give them power. If I stay, I risk the North. I must go. Jon protested, but Lyanna's mind was set. This is not just about me. It is about the North. If we show fear, we are finished. She made preparations in silence. Ghost would go with her, and Arya, who would not be left behind. Davos, always loyal, insisted on coming too. They left Winterfell at dawn, under a sky streaked with gold and lavender. The roads south were rough, bandits prowling, villages half rebuilt, the scars of war everywhere. As they rode, Lyanna remembered the stories she'd loved as a girl. Of Nymeria the warrior queen, of Bael the bard who vanished with a Stark maiden, of the first king in the North who rode with a direwolf at his side. Now she was the story, and it weighed heavier than any sword. They reached the gates of King's Landing as spring reached its peak, the city's domes and spires shining above the ruins of the Sept. The gold cloaks eyed them with suspicion, but Davos' name and Sansa's letters gained them entrance. Crowds gathered as they rode through the city. Lyanna kept her face hidden, but rumors had flown faster than their horses. By the time they reached the Red Keep, people were shouting her name, tossing flowers and curses in equal measure. Inside, the High Septon received them beneath shattered windows, sunlight streaking the dust in the air. Lyanna Stark, he intoned. Do you deny that you were dead and now live? Lyanna met his gaze, unflinching. I died, and by fire and faith. I returned. I am not the first the gods have restored, nor shall I be the last. The Septon's mouth twisted. The dead must rest, my lady. The faith cannot abide sorcery. Arya's hand was on her blade, but Lyanna shook her head. What would you have me do? Return to my grave and let the world burn again? There was silence, thick and heavy. The Septon tried again. If you kneel before the faith, renounce your claim to Winterfell, and swear never to use your powers. Lyanna laughed, the sound echoing in the ruined hall. I kneel to no one but the old gods, and I will not yield my home. The North remembers. The North endures. If you mean to kill me, then do it. For a heartbeat, it seemed the city held its breath. Then from the crowd a voice called out, old and cracked, but clear. Let the wolf be. She saved us all. Would you kill the dawn to please your books? Others joined in, first a trickle, then a flood, until the septon paled. In that moment, Lyanna knew the truth. Fear is the sharpest weapon, but hope endures. They rode from King's Landing that afternoon, the people watching, the north safe for another season. As they crossed the Trident, Arya turned to her. Will it ever be over? Lyanna watched the river, bright with the memory of blood and battle. No. But every day we choose to fight, it gets a little easier. They returned to Winterfell as summer settled in. Lyanna took up her place at the heart tree, watching the children play, the crops grow. The wolves run wild in the dark woods. Sometimes she dreamed of the dead, of the fire that had raised her. Sometimes she woke in the night, the taste of death bitter on her tongue. But always, the sun rose, and always the north endured. And so did she. In the bright, fleeting northern summer, the world felt softer. For the first time since her return, Lyanna Stark found herself able to walk the fields beyond the walls of Winterfell, without expecting each sunrise to be her last. The ground was littered with wildflowers, and the pale green shoots of new wheat broke through the earth. She moved among her people as if she belonged. She hunted with the direwolves, laughed at children's games, listened at length to the counsel of old men and wildlings alike. Each day, the ice of memory melted a little further. Word of her journey to King's Landing, and the way she had faced the faith unbowed, had spread like wildfire. From Bear Island to the Blazewater Bay, from the icy Gift to White Harbor's bustling docks, there were tales told in market and mead hall of Lyanna the Dawn Wolf, the lady who defied death and would not bend her knee to fire or faith. For every noble who whispered that she was an abomination, 3 small folk would insist she was the reason the sun rose that morning. Sansa had returned to Winterfell before Lyanna, bearing with her news both hopeful and worrisome. Queen Daenerys would journey north once more, this time in peace, her dragons leashed at her side. The great houses were restless, bruised by war and change. King's Landing itself teetered on the edge of peace and chaos. Cersei had vanished, rumored dead, and the Reach and Dorne bickered endlessly. For now, all eyes were on the north. Lyanna spent the mornings riding the hills with Jon and Arya, listening to the breeze and the song of the grass, letting the old wounds air in the sunlight. Ghost ranged ahead, a silent shadow. Jon rode in quiet strength, more at ease now with the truth of his blood and kin. Arya rode with her usual reckless speed, the first to shout at a falcon or leap from her horse to chase a hare through the grass. It was on one such morning, with the wind sharp and wild, that Lyanna heard the sound of riders at the edge of the wood. She slowed her horse and gestured for Arya and Jon to stay close. Ghost lowered his head, teeth bared. From the line of elms came a party of 3, a Mormont in battered mail, a woman with copper hair dressed in the dark blue of White Harbor, and a grizzled wildling chief whose beard looked fit to swallow a raven whole. Lyanna reined in and waited. The Mormont, whose arm bore the green and black bear sigil, dipped his head in greeting. Lady Lyanna, Warden Jon, Lady Arya. We come from the Moot. There is news. Arya's eyes sharpened. What news? The wildling spat. Southron's march, Queen's banners, dragon and lion together. Lyanna's mouth tightened, but she kept her tone mild. They come in peace. We have their word. The woman from White Harbor shook her head. So they claim, but there is a stirring at Moat Cailin. Too many swords, too many cell sails. Some say there's a lord in the south who would see a new war begin. Highgarden's men gather by the hundreds, and the faith's banners ride with them. Jon said nothing for a moment, then turned to Lyanna. This is what we feared. There will be no lasting peace if the south cannot accept what's happened here. Now, Lyanna stared over the hills to the south, seeing not the bright grass and cloudless sky, but the ghosts of winter, the fires of war, the faces of the dead. If there is to be another war, let it be of words, not swords. Call the banners, prepare the city, and let us ride to meet them together. The 3 messengers bowed, relief evident on their faces. As they rode away, Arya grinned at her aunt. Are you afraid? Lyanna shook her head. No. I have already faced death. What is there left to fear? But fear did come, though it took a new shape. That night, when Lyanna slept, she dreamed of a tower wreathed in roses, the smell of blood and dust, and a silver voice calling to her across the years. She saw her father's face, not stern but sorrowful, and heard the weirwoods whisper her name. When she woke, heart pounding, the fire within her flickered but did not die. They prepared Winterfell for the arrival of Queen Daenerys' company and the southern lords. The city swelled. Knights in shining armor rode among wildlings in leathers, smiths and farriers hammered day and night. Banners of 100 houses fluttered over the new-planted fields. Maester Eddard, the youngest and cleverest to serve at Winterfell in 2 generations, worked without rest to organize supplies and healing. Lyanna oversaw it all, though she let Sansa handle much of the pageantry. She preferred the quiet hours, walking the battlements, speaking with survivors, helping mend a broken roof, or listening to a blind old man tell tales of the first Stark kings. She found herself drawn most often to the children. Stubborn little boys from the Crannogs, girls learning to fight with stick swords under Arya's eye, babes born in the deep winter now learning to toddle in the grass. She wanted fiercely to see them safe. On the day of the meeting, the air was heavy with storm. Lyanna dressed simply, her black hair braided in a thick rope down her back, a silver wolf's head at her throat. Jon wore the Stark colors, Arya dressed in gray and white, a sword at each hip. Queen Daenerys arrived at the head of a long gleaming column. Unsullied marched with perfect discipline, their spears glinting. 2 dragons circled overhead, shadows rippling on the ground. At Daenerys' right rode Lord Gendry Baratheon, tall and stern, and to her left a slender woman with the blue eyes and silver hair of Valyria, Melisandre, the queen's confidante. Behind came lords of the Riverlands, Reach and Dorne, and a grim-faced priest in the white and gold of the faith. Winterfell's gates stood wide. Lyanna, Jon, Arya, and Sansa awaited at the steps. Daenerys reined in, her dragons landing with a shudder of earth, wings folding tight. She dismounted and strode forward, every inch the queen, but there was kindness in her eyes as she inclined her head. Lady Lyanna, Warden Jon, Lady Sansa, Lady Arya, the North is as beautiful as ever. Thank you for your welcome. Lyanna smiled, cool but genuine. You are welcome here, Your Grace. We have much to discuss. Inside the Great Hall, the meeting began. Southern lords pressed their grievances, some veiled, some open. The Faith's priest, a gaunt man with sunken eyes, rose to accuse Lyanna of unnatural sorcery, of tainting the land by defying the laws of life and death. He spoke of omens and portents, of the Seven's wrath. Lyanna listened, face calm as stone. When the priest fell silent, she rose. I died in the God's Wood, she said. I died to save this world. I do not claim to be holy, nor pure, nor a thing of prophecy. I am a woman of the North, a Stark by birth and by blood, and I will not be shamed for surviving. If the gods are angry, let them strike me down. But until then, I will protect my people. A hush settled. Daenerys rose, her dragon's eyes reflecting the firelight outside. I have seen death. I have seen what is unnatural. Lady Lyanna is no monster. She is a leader, forged in darkness, who stood when none else could. The North stands with her. So do I. Jon's voice was steel. If any man seeks to threaten the peace of this land, let him do so openly. A lord from the Reach, his tabard stained with old wine, shouted, "This is blasphemy! We will not bend the knee to a woman risen from the grave." Now, Arya's laughter was bright as ice. Then don't bend. Run, if you're afraid. Tormund, seated at the far end of the table, banged his mug. If you've no courage, Best hide behind your mother's skirts. The North is for the living, and for those who fight. The hall erupted in noise. Voices clashed. Old grudges flared. Daenerys stood, holding up her hand for silence. Enough. The realm is broken. We need unity. Winter is over, but the scars remain. Let the North keep its laws and ways. Let the South have its faith. If you cannot abide peace, you are free to leave. In the end, no swords were drawn. Some lords departed in sullen silence. Others, won by Arya's wit or Jon's calm, swore anew to keep peace. The faith's priest left in silence, his threats reduced to muttering in the corridor. After, Daenerys lingered in the Godswood with Lyanna. The Dragon Queen studied the heart tree, her silver hair catching the last light. "My dragons are restless," Daenerys said quietly. "They feel the old magic here. Tell me, Lyanna, what do you see when you close your eyes?" Lyanna hesitated, then spoke the truth. "I see the dark. I see the fire. I see the faces of the dead and the hope of the living. I see a dawn that must be guarded, not simply won." Daenerys nodded. "I envy you. I see only the future. What might be. What could go wrong. Sometimes I wish I were a wolf, not a dragon." Lyanna placed her hand on the rough, scarred bark. "The world needs both." That night, Jon found her at the parapet, looking over the fields lit by moonlight. He stood beside her, quiet as a ghost. "Do you regret it?" he asked finally. Lyanna turned. "Regret what?" "Coming back. Facing all of this." "No." She shook her head. "No. I regret only the time lost. The years I did not see you grow. The moments stolen by war." Jon's eyes filled with an old sorrow, but he smiled. "We have time now. Perhaps." She placed her hand on his. "If we keep earning it." Summer deepened. The fields grew lush, the city's wounds healed. Lyanna spent her days in council, her nights beneath the heart tree, sometimes alone, sometimes with Arya or Jon or Sansa at her side. Together, they planned the new order. A North free but allied. A council of houses, great and small wildlings given land and respect. The faith kept at arm's length. One afternoon, a rider arrived breathless from the Shadow Tower, bringing news from beyond the wall. The wildlings had found a settlement of strange men. Pale, silent, their eyes black as night, their speech an old tongue none could place. They sought shelter, food, peace. Lyanna called council at once. Tormund, hearing the report, laughed. "The world is wider than we thought. Let them come. Let us see if they are friend or foe." Jon agreed. "The dawn we fought for is for all living things, not just those born south of the wall." So they sent a party north. Lyanna, Arya, Jon, Tormund, and a handful of trusted warriors. They crossed the wall at Castle Black, now half ruined but standing. They rode through fields of moss and fog, the sky a wild arc of stars at night. The strangers met them at a place where a stream carved a deep blue scar through stone. They were wary, but not hostile. Their leader, a woman with pale hair and the scent of pine, spoke a language Lyanna felt she should know, though she could not place it. It was Arya who finally broke the silence, offering bread and salt. The old hospitality. The woman took it and smiled, her teeth sharp and white. "Dawn." The word strange on her tongue. "We come for the dawn." Lyanna nodded, understanding. In the weeks that followed, the strangers settled north of the Gift, building huts and tending fire. They shared stories in the night, tales of their own long winter, their exile, their hopes. Some called them children, others simply the lost. But they became kin, and the wildlings and Northmen alike learned their ways. Lyanna watched it all, marveling at the way the world could change and heal. She spent one last night alone beneath the stars, the fire in her chest burning low and steady, the past and future folded together in the hush of the woods. Ghost sat beside her, warm and real. She whispered, "Is this peace?" Is this what it was all for? Mendenschau. In the night, the wind carried the scent of pine and snow, the sound of laughter, the memory of loss. She let herself weep, not for regret, but for the strange, fragile joy of being alive. At dawn, she rose and walked to the edge of the wood. The world was wide and wild, full of new dawns, old stories, and the promise of more. The Wolf Maiden's work was never truly finished. But for now, Lyanna Stark, daughter, mother, leader, legend, breathed in the bright new day and let herself hope. Autumn crept into the north with the slow patience of a hunter. The leaves in the godswood faded from deep green to rust and gold, carpeting the soft earth in a hush that stilled the air. In those twilight months, Winterfell settled into a new rhythm. Not the desperate thrum of war, nor the clamor of rebuilding, but a hard-earned quiet, a watchfulness born of peace uncertain. Lyanna walked the ramparts in the dawn frost, the ancient stones rough beneath her boots. The castle hummed with the life of harvest. Carts of turnips and barley trundled in from the fields, the scent of apples and wood smoke hanging in the crisp air. She paused by the west tower, watching the sun bleed over the land, and wondered if she would ever feel at home in this body shaped by death and fire. On the practice green below, Arya sparred with 3 wildling youths, her movements sharp and effortless as the edge of a new-forged blade. Their laughter rang out, chasing away old shadows. In the kitchens, Sansa directed the laying up of winter stores, her voice calm and quick, eyes always watchful. Jon ranged north and south, sometimes gone for days, his return marked by the howl of Ghost in the yard and the easy warmth that spread through the halls when they were together again. One morning, as the last of the wheat was cut and the cider pressed, a raven arrived from the east. Its message was short. Ship seen off Skagos, black sails. Banner unknown. Counsel needed. Davos was the first to read it, his brow furrowing. They're not ours, he told Lyanna Sansa, and Jon in council. Could be Ironborn, could be worse. Sansa studied the seal. It isn't the Kraken, no mark at all. And yet Skagos, only the bold or the mad would dare land there unbidden. Arya's smile was feral. Then let's be bold ourselves. Lyanna nodded. We ride at first light. Jon, gather 20 good riders. Sansa, keep the gates watched. Arya, come with me. Nena one. The journey to the coast was swift and cold, the wind sharp off the bay. The party reached the stony bluffs above Skagos at dusk, the sea below steel gray, restless as a wolf's heart. On the beach, 3 ships with black sails lay at anchor. Men and women moved among them, tall, clad in strange leathers, some with axes strapped to their backs, others with bows. A few wore little but furs and carried long knives, their hair braided with beads and shells. Lyanna and Arya rode down the switchback path, Jon and Davos close behind, the riders fanning out in the gathering gloom. At the water's edge, a woman waited, her skin the deep brown of sun-warmed wood, hair plaited with bits of bone. She raised a hand in peace as Lyanna dismounted. I am Kara of the Sea Wolves. We come with news and a warning. May we speak as kin beneath the old laws. Then shall. Lyanna nodded, offering bread and salt from her pouch. Winterfell welcomes those who honor guest right. Kara accepted, smiling with sharp white teeth. Her people watched, wary but unthreatening. We sailed east to trade, past the ruins of Valyria, to the islands beyond, Kara said, voice low and musical. There is stirring in the old lands, a darkness that has not learned to stay dead. We found ships burned, villages empty, the people gone or mad. Some say the dead walk again, not in great armies, but as shadows in the wild. Something hunts the world's edge. Jon's face hardened. We have seen our share of the dead. Is this the same darkness? Kara's gaze flicked to Lyanna. No. This is older, quieter, but not less deadly. It speaks in dreams, lures the lost, stirs the heart of the earth. Arya's hand drifted to her dagger. What do you want of us? Kara shrugged. Ace at your fire. A bond of peace. And warning for your own, not all wounds heal cleanly. The world is full of things that hunger for what we have won. Lyanna nodded. You have it. Stay as long as you wish. If there are threats, we will meet them together. They camped with the sea wolves under the aurora-lit sky. The visitors sang songs in a tongue neither northern nor ironborn, their music wild as the wind. Lyanna spoke with Kyra by the fire, learning of distant lands and stranger storms, feeling the old ache of wanderlust stir within her. She asked Kyra why she had come so far, risking the wrath of both Skagosi and Stark. Kyra looked to the stars. We are the last of our kind, perhaps. The world changes. The wolf endures. It seemed wise to learn from the wolves. And now, when they returned to Winterfell, Sansa welcomed the sea wolves with cautious grace. Kyra's people brought crafts of bone and driftwood, salted fish, rare silks, and news of the wide world. Their presence was unsettling at first. Old men muttered. Children stared. Even Ghost regarded them with a kind of patient suspicion. But over time, curiosity won out. A Skagosi boy and a sea-wolf girl were soon seen sparring on the green, to the delight of Arya, who claimed every victory as her own. In the evenings, the hall filled with song and laughter. Jon found himself talking at length with Kyra about the ways of the sea, about honor and betrayal, about the ghosts of the past and what might yet come from the east. Sansa and Arya plotted with the Sea Wolves matriarchs to learn the art of weaving stormproof cloaks and the best way to salt meat for winter. Lyanna watched all of it, feeling more than ever the weight of her strange second life. She dreamt, as autumn deepened, of a world where her parents lived, where Brandon and Benjen and Ned still filled Winterfell's halls with noise and pride. She woke some nights in cold sweat. The fire inside her banked, but never extinguished. One dawn, she found Arya in the Godswood, kneeling at the heart tree, eyes squeezed shut. Are you praying? Lyanna asked, settling beside her. Arya shrugged. Maybe, or maybe just listening. The world's so noisy now. I can barely hear myself think. Lyanna closed her eyes. The old gods did not answer with words, but she felt the peace settle between them. You fought for this, she said softly. You bled for it. You should enjoy it. Then? Arya cracked a smile. I am. I just don't want to forget who I am, or who we are. Lyanna squeezed her hand. You won't. Not while there are wolves at Winterfell. As the leaves fell, news continued to come from all corners. A maester's raven brought word of a harvest festival in White Harbor, the first since the long night. Another bird, this one limping and battered, carried news of unrest in the Westerlands. The sons of Lannister vassals gathered under a crimson banner, demanding vengeance for old wrongs. Sansa urged caution. Let them bluster. They cannot reach us without half the realm's help, while Jon made ready the garrisons, just in case peace does not last. The Sea Wolves asked to send an embassy to Old Town to trade with the scholars and shipwrights of the South. Sansa approved, sending Davos with them as envoy. Before he left, Davos met Lyanna in the stable. Ghost curled at her feet. You've done well, my lady, Davos said, tugging his gloves. You brought the North through darkness. Now you hold it in the light. Lyanna smiled. It isn't my doing alone. Maybe not. But the North remembers who lit the first fire. He pressed her hand and was gone. That winter, the snows came late. The first storms were gentle, dusting the roofs and fields in white. The people of Winterfell welcomed the cold with laughter and bonfires, songs echoing through the night. The Sea Wolves built ice lanterns that glowed blue and gold, teaching northern children to carve runes in the frost. Arya organized a wild hunt for the youngest of the wolf pups, who tumbled through the snow in a riot of joy. One night, as the aurora rippled overhead, Lyanna stood atop the tallest tower and let the wind whip through her hair. Jon joined her, silent, his cloak snapping at his ankles. It's beautiful, he murmured. Yes, she agreed. I never thought to see it again. They watched in silence. In the distance, the sea was black and endless. Jon turned. "Do you ever wish?" He trailed off. Lyanna smiled gently. "That things have been different. Every day. But then I see what we have built here, and I know I would not trade it. Not for all the old songs in the world." Below them, Sansa's voice called up. "You two, come inside. You'll freeze." They laughed, descending into the warm, firelit hall, where Arya was arm wrestling Kara to general acclaim. As winter deepened, Lyanna found herself more often in the crypts. She stood before the statues of her ancestors. Her father's stern face, her brother's proud gazes, her own likeness now newly carved by a master from White Harbor. The fire that lived inside her flickered quietly, a companion rather than a burden. She whispered her thanks, her fears, her hopes into the silence. And in that hush, she felt not the loneliness of the dead, but the comfort of the pack. The North would endure, because it was not one wolf but many, bound together by blood and will, and the memory of darkness conquered. One afternoon, a Skagosi scout returned breathless with news from the east. Fires on the horizon, a strange new ship sighted, its sails crimson, its figurehead a screaming face. Kara met with Lyanna at once. "We know this ship," she said. "She is called Widow's Wail. Her crew are pirates, sorcerers, worse. They worship no god, serve no law." Jon listened gravely. "Do you wish to fight them?" Kara nodded. "Alone we will die. With you perhaps we will endure." Lyanna called the banners once more. The North responded, as it always had, with axes and bows, with cold resolve. Sansa sent word to White Harbor for ships. Arya and Kara trained a corps of scouts and hunters. Jon rode with the vanguard, his wolf's howl carrying through the night. The pirates came at dawn, black hulls slicing through the mist, voices raised in mad laughter. Their leader, a woman clad in armor made of bone and gold, called herself the Widow Queen. Her eyes burned with a fever that chilled even the bravest men. The battle was fierce and sudden, fought among the rocks and tide pools of the Skagos shore. Northern archers rained death from the cliffs. Sea wolves darted in longboats. Arya cut through the chaos like a silver shadow. Lyanna led from the front, her sword burning with a light that seared the night. The pirates broke and ran. The Widow Queen dragged down screaming by Ghost and Karas warriors. The price was high. Many sea wolves died, and a handful of Northmen too. But the victory was clean and hard won. In the aftermath, Kara knelt to Lyanna on the blood-wet sand. "You have saved us," she said, voice shaking. "You have earned the loyalty of all our kin." Lyanna pulled her to her feet. "We fight together. The dawn belongs to us all." They burned the pirate dead in a great pyre by the shore, songs rising into the sky. That night, Lyanna walked alone by the water, her heart aching with grief and pride. She stared into the flames, feeling the weight of her own survival, the miracle, and the cost. Ghost padded to her side, pressing his head against her hip. She knelt, burying her fingers in his thick fur. "We are still here," she whispered. "We endure." Above them, the stars flickered, ancient and patient. The sea sang a song of loss and hope. Winterfell awaited her return, a haven in the wild, alive with laughter and stories. Lyanna stood, brushing away her tears. She turned north, toward home, knowing that every step she took was both a memory and a promise. She would not live forever. Her fire would one day fade. But the North, the pack, the hope of a dawn that would not be stolen by darkness again, that would endure as long as wolves ran wild beneath the old stars, as long as children remembered her name. And so the seasons turned. The Wolf Maiden watched over her land, her kin, her friends, a guardian of peace hard-earned, the spark of the living flame. Each night, she prayed not for herself, but for the world she had given everything to save. A world that, for now, was bright and fierce and full of the living. Snow fell thick and silent, muffling the world beyond the walls and cloaking Winterfell in the white hush of midwinter. The castle was a hearth in the darkness, its towers golden lit with candles and fire. the windows aglow with life. In the night, Lyanna Stark would slip from her bed and walk the battlements alone. Cloak drawn close, hair tangled by the wind, her breath turning to mist that vanished as quickly as hope sometimes did. She watched the stars wheel overhead, listened to the muffled laughter from the great hall, and let her thoughts drift across the years. Sometimes, in the hush before dawn, she still felt the call of death tugging at her bones. The old gods whispered in the trees and her heart responded, but she no longer feared their summons. She had learned to bear the fire and the frost within her. And if she could not name the thing she had become, she could at least live in it. One day, one night. One day, one night, one changing season at a time. The New Year's winter was long and hard. Snowdrifts buried the outbuildings, wolves howled in the woods beyond the fields, and the gods' wood stood frozen and still, the heart trees' red leaves brittle as glass. But Winterfell's stores were full, and its people prepared. There was meat hanging in the larders, ale stacked in the cellars, roots and dried beans, and salted fish for 100 hungry mouths. Sansa, never trusting fortune, kept the kitchen at a fever of activity, baking and stewing, her voice always clear and kind. Arya drilled the children in the yard, teaching them how to run on icy flagstones, how to slip a knife from a boot, how to disappear in a crowded room. Jon and Ghost returned from the rills in the dead of night, heavy with news. Lyanna met him at the gate, her cloak thrown hastily over her nightdress, the wind whipping about her legs. "There's unrest west of the White Knife," Jon said, voice low as they walked the snowy path to the keep. "Some Lannister men have found new banners. Raids on the river villages. Sansa sent ravens, but she fears an army might come when the snows melt." Lyanna was silent for a time. She thought of the long years of war, the blood in the snow, the children who still woke screaming some nights. We must not be caught unprepared, but the North will not march at the word of old feuds. The world has changed. Jon nodded. "I'll ride at first thaw, gather what men we can, show our face. If they want to test the wolf's teeth, let them." She smiled at him, fierce and proud. "You are your father's son." He touched her cheek. "And I am yours." Inside, the great hall was alive with music and talk. Kara of the Sea Wolves played a bone flute by the hearth. Her people clustered around her, telling stories in their lilting tongue. Gendry Baratheon had come for the winter, hands never clean, always ready to help mend a hinge or set a broken beam. Arya had dragged him into the kitchen earlier, and now they sat together laughing, flour dusting their sleeves. Sansa and Davos debated the best way to ration the grain stores, the hall bright with their quiet determination. The children, wildlings and Northmen both, played at swords under Arya's eye, tumbling across the rushes, their shouts echoing off the old stone. Lyanna took her place at the high table, letting the warmth seep into her bones. She felt no need to speak. Her presence was enough, a living talisman in a world still uncertain of its own peace. That night, as she sat by the dying fire, Sansa joined her, a mug of hot wine in her hand. "You carry them well, you know," Sansa said quietly. "The hopes, the fears. I'm not sure I could have borne it." Lyanna smiled. "You would have. You already do. We share it, sister. I am no queen. Only the wolf that stands the longest in the cold." Sansa studied her, blue eyes grave. "Sometimes I wonder how much longer we'll have this. Peace. A home. Each other." Lyanna reached out, squeezing her hand. "We'll keep it as long as we can. That's all anyone can promise." The days blurred together, winter deepening. Jon left again with a dozen riders, tracking the Lannister banners and the rumors of sellswords, moving north from the Twins. Arya ranged further east, sometimes gone for days, returning with news of wildlings trading at the wall, or Skagosi ships spotted off the shore. Kara's people helped mend nets and taught the smiths to forge new harpoons for the coming spring hunts. A message arrived from White Harbor. Lord Manderley invited Winterfell to send a delegation for the Feast of Ice and Light, a celebration to mark the first full moon after midwinter. Lyanna agreed, eager for news from the coast, and glad for the chance to remind her people of the wider world. She traveled south with Sansa, Arya, Gendry, and a company of wildlings and sea-wolves. The journey was harsh. Ice-choked rivers, frozen marshes, the wind howling off the sea. But the sight of White Harbor shining like a lantern above the waves was its own reward. The feast was grand. Fish and venison and rare winter apples, 1,000 candles burning in mirrored halls. The city was crowded with folk from every corner of the north, wildlings and crannogmen, manderly cousins, and salt wives from the bay. Lyanna listened as sailors spoke of strange storms. Far to the east, islands vanished in the night, and merchants haunted by dreams of fire and shadow. She heard whispers of unrest in Old Town, of the Faith sending secret agents north, of strange illnesses spreading in the warmer lands. But there was laughter, too, and songs, and the sense that the North was more than just wolves in the woods. It was a living thing, stubborn and proud. After the feast, Arya took Gendry out onto the frozen docks to dance. Sansa sat with Lady Manderly, sharing news and recipes, and Lyanna walked the seawall, the air sharp in her lungs. She was joined by Kiara, who gazed out over the dark water, her eyes far away. "My people want to stay," Kiara said. "They like the north. The cold suits us. Will you let us build on your lands?" Lyanna nodded. "You have proven yourselves. The north is stronger for your presence." Kiara smiled, teeth flashing. "The sea is full of monsters. But here at least, we have peace." They returned to Winterfell before the next snows. Jon met them at the gate, exhausted but grinning. "The Lannister banners have retreated. Only a handful of fools left, skulking in the woods. We can breathe again." Spring crept up at last. Slow and sullen, the snow melted from the fields, crocuses blooming on the high meadows. Calves and foals were born, lambs tumbling in the grass. Children shouted through the yards, chasing each other with sticks and handfuls of thawed mud. The wildlings planted their first gardens. Sea wolves built boats of pine and birch, and the people of the north looked forward for the first time in years. Lyanna found herself at the heart of it all. She judged disputes, blessed marriages, settled quarrels between wildlings and Northmen, gave counsel to Sansa and Arya, and welcomed travelers from the south. She saw young men and women trained together, no longer lord and wildling, but simply children of the new north. She helped repair roofs, plant new trees in the godswood, and see to it that every fire burned warm. One afternoon, a raven arrived with a royal seal. Daenerys Targaryen, Queen of the South, invited Lyanna to visit King's Landing, to bear witness to the coronation of her heir, and to formalize the pact of peace between dragon and wolf. Sansa urged her to go. Arya insisted on coming along, and Jon, ever cautious, promised to keep Winterfell safe in their absence. The journey south was longer than any before. They passed through the Riverlands, where scars of war still lingered, and the Reach, where old lords eyed them with suspicion and awe. Arya ranged ahead, as always, vanishing for days to bring back news or trinkets or odd tales from the road. King's Landing was changed, scarred by fire but bustling and vibrant, the city walls painted with banners and the scent of orange blossom on the breeze. Daenerys welcomed them in the Red Keep, her hair silver, her eyes kind, a young girl at her side. Her heir, Rhaella, as fierce and clever as her mother. The pact was sworn in the Godswood south of the city, beneath a transplanted heart tree from the north. Lyanna and Daenerys spoke the old words, of peace, of kinship, of the dawn that must never be forgotten. The city's people watched, uncertain but hopeful. At the feast, Arya slipped away, lost in the maze of streets, while Sansa made allies of half the court. Her smile warm but wary. Lyanna wandered the gardens, remembering other nights, other faces, her father, her brothers, the ghost of Rhaegar Targaryen, the lives she might have lived. She found Daenerys in a quiet alcove, gazing at the stars. "Do you ever regret it?" Lyanna asked, voice soft as the night. Daenerys laughed, a sound both weary and bright. "Every day. And yet, "Here we are. Here we are," Lyanna echoed. The next morning they left the city, riding north with the rising sun. Along the way, they met old friends. Brian of Tarth, now Lady Commander of the Queen's Guard. Samwell Tarly, Maester of Old Town, who greeted them with tears and laughter. Even Tyrion Lannister, older and wiser, who offered sly advice and strong wine. At Winterfell, Jon welcomed them home with open arms, the people cheering their return. Spring was in full bloom, the fields green, the rivers running free. The sea wolves brought gifts from their latest journeys. Pearls, rare herbs, tales of a distant land where the sun never set. Lyanna stood in the Godswood, watching the light shift through the new leaves, the fire in her chest quiet but constant. Arya laughed nearby, showing children how to throw daggers at a spinning log. Sansa and Jon walked together through the orchard, talking quietly, their burdens lightened by love and time. That night, there was a feast for the ages. Meat flowed, music soared, the hall shook with song and dance. Caris people sang of storms and survival. Wildlings bellowed their own songs of winter and the dawn, and the Northmen roared their approval. Jon and Arya danced a wild round together. Sansa joined in with her own easy grace, and Lyanna let herself be drawn into the circle, spinning and laughing beneath the banners of wolf and sun. When the fires burned low and the last songs faded, Lyanna walked the ramparts one last time before dawn. The world was wide and wild and full of dangers yet unknown, but she felt none of the old fear. The North was strong, the pack unbroken, the dawn hard-won but real. She leaned against the ancient stone, watching the sky lighten over the fields. In her heart, the old fire glowed. A memory, a promise, a hope for the ages. And somewhere, in the wild woods beyond the walls, a wolf howled. Lyanna smiled, closed her eyes, and let the morning come. Yeah. Hey. The morning after the feast dawned with a hush that seemed woven from dreams. Winterfell's stone steamed in the gold-washed chill, and the castle's people drifted through the yards like wraiths, eyes bright and slow with last night's mead and laughter. Lyanna was among the first to rise. She walked the Godswood in bare feet, dew painting her toes, feeling each blade of grass as if it were a stitch anchoring her to the world. Ghost shadowed her, his coat white as the new snow that clung in pockets to the roots and hollows. Above, the heart tree's leaves whispered in the wind, their sound more like memory than words. Lyanna let her hand rest on the rough bark, closing her eyes, breathing in the silence. She listened, not for prophecy or command, but simply for the rhythm of living, a throb deep in the earth, a pulse that belonged to wolf and tree and woman alike. From somewhere distant, perhaps the kitchens, perhaps the bailey, came the rising voices of children. Arya's laugh rang above them, wild and sharp, and Lyanna smiled, her lips softening from old sorrows into something like peace. She let herself drift, lost in that harmony, until a footstep sounded behind her, careful and measured. Jon stood there, hair unbound and tunic loose, his face shadowed by thought. "You never sleep long after a feast," he said. Lyanna shrugged. "Too many dreams. I like the world better before everyone else wakes." He nodded. "Me too. Sometimes I think we're not so different." She smiled, tracing the outline of a heart-shaped leaf with her fingertip. "We're all wolves, even when we think we're something else." Then, they walked the Godswood together in silence, passing beneath the thickening green, the old scars of winter half forgotten. Beyond the wall, the world was stirring. Spring birds called. Sansa's voice carried on the wind, directing servants to sweep the last of the petals from the steps, to check the stores, to prepare for visitors. Always another arrival, another delegation seeking the counsel or blessing of the North. Later, in the Great Hall, Lyanna presided over the day's petitions. Farmers whose boundaries had been muddied by the spring floods, a wildling mother whose son had quarreled with a fisherman's boy and broken a thumb, two sea-wolf brothers with a dispute over the best site for a new boathouse. Lyanna listened, offered words both gentle and firm, reminded them that the North was theirs if they kept it together, not apart. She judged as a stark, steady, fair, the old fire banked but burning in her eyes. Gendry returned from the forges, his arms black with soot, carrying a new blade of shining steel. He offered it to Arya in the yard, and the children clamored to watch as she spun it through the air. The weapon gleamed, light and dangerous. And Lyanna saw in her niece's stance the same hunger for the horizon that had once driven her to run wild beyond the walls. By midday, the gates rang open for a fresh arrival. Lord Manderley's party came in a river of green and white, banners snapping, their wagons creaking with salted fish and casks of pale winter wine. Lyanna met them in the yard, embracing the old lord as a brother. "We bring more than goods, my lady," Manderley said, his eyes bright. "We bring word of the wider world. Ships sail again from Bravos and Pentos. There is talk of trade, of new alliances." "Bam?" Sansa arrived, cheeks flushed, hair braided in thick cords. "They want grain, timber, ice-hardened horses. They'll pay in gold, spices, silverware." Lyanna smiled. "Let them. The North will be strong, but generous. Our peace is worth as much as our steel." As the afternoon stretched, Lyanna slipped away from the noise. She climbed the broken tower, the oldest in the keep, its stones slick with moss and time. She sat with her knees drawn up, watching the ravens circle in the pale sky. From here she saw the sweep of the land, fields greening, the new planted groves, the white river flashing through threads. The world was larger than she remembered as a girl, and yet more knowable. Every path seemed mapped by old suffering and new hope. She heard footsteps behind her, softer than Jon's, and turned to see Arya settling down beside her. "I thought you'd be training," Lyanna said. Arya shrugged, brushing a lock of hair from her eyes. "I was. But I saw you up here. You always seem far away even when you're not." Lyanna smiled. "I was just thinking how much the world has changed, and how little we do in the end to shape it. We fight and bleed and mourn, but the grass grows back, the rivers run, we endure." Arya's mouth twisted into a grin. "I like that. We endure. But we're not done fighting, are we?" "No," Lyanna said. "There's always something new. Always someone who thinks the world belongs to them alone." Arya glanced out over the rooftops. "I heard the sea wolves want to build a shipyard up the White Knife. Kara says they're planning to sail east again, look for the islands she dreamed of as a girl. She asked me to come." Bender whined. Lyanna studied her niece, seeing in her the restless spark that had always defined the Stark women. "Will you go?" "I don't know. Maybe. I love the North, but sometimes I dream of something different. Do you think that's wrong?" Lyanna shook her head. "No. I think the North is big enough to survive a few dreams." They sat for a time in easy silence, watching the wind chase clouds over the wild, beautiful land. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, a messenger arrived from the wall. The rider was lean, with a face burned red by wind and cold. He knelt in the hall, breathless. "News from the Shadow Tower, my lady. A wildling party vanished near the Frostfangs. No blood, no bodies, just gone. Our rangers found only footprints, circling. Some say the shadows are thickening again." Jon took the news with a grim set of his jaw. Sansa frowned, worry creasing her brow. Arya's eyes narrowed, thoughtful. Lyanna called the council at once. The great hall filled with lords, wildlings, sea wolves, and the bravest of the North's folk. Kara spoke, her voice hard as flint. "We know those lands. The shadows can swallow a man whole. My mother's taught me to trust the birds. If the crows vanish, men should not linger." Jon looked to Lyanna. "What do we do?" Lyanna stood. "We ride north at dawn. A small party, no banners, no drums. We see for ourselves. We let the wall know the North stands with them." In the morning they set out. Lyanna, Jon, Arya, Kara, and a handful of the hardiest wildlings and sea wolves. The road north was rough and silent. The snow packed and blew in the gullies, the trees silvered with rime. They passed villages where the people eyed them from behind shuttered windows, fear etched deep in their faces. At Castle Black, the new Lord Commander, a quiet wildling named Bran, greeted them with grim hospitality. "It's true then," he said. Something moves beyond the wall. Not whites, not men. Something else. Arya bristled. Did anyone see what? Only shapes, Bran replied. A darkness that walked upright, with eyes like ice. No dead left behind, no sign they ever lived. Lyanna felt the old fire stir inside her, restless and uneasy. They pressed on beyond the wall, the wild wind biting through fur and wool. The frost fangs loomed sharp against the sky, glaciers creaking in the cold. They moved in silence. Hunting for tracks. Listening for birds. The crows were gone, the forest quiet. On the third night, they made camp beside a black stream. Kara kept watch, silent and tense, her hand never far from her knife. Jon and Lyanna shared bread in the pale moonlight. Do you think it's starting again? Jon asked, voice barely more than breath. Lyanna shook her head. I don't know, but the north has never been free of shadows. We endure, Jon. That's all we can promise. In the deepest hour, a cry echoed across the valley. Arya was gone in an instant, knife drawn. They found her at the tree line, crouched above a set of tracks that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. No prints, only an absence in the snow, a cold that hurt the eyes. Kara muttered a prayer. That is not man nor beast. That is old magic, hungry for the living. They waited in tense silence. Nothing came from the woods, but the sense of watching, of being measured and found wanting, never left them. They pressed deeper the next day, following the knot tracks as they twisted between trees and stones. They found nothing but more silence, more absence. At dusk, they turned back, weary, hearts heavy. At Castle Black, Bran met them at the gate. Another party is missing, this time from Eastwatch. The world is shifting again. Lyanna set her jaw. We must warn the South. The dawn we won will not keep itself. They rode hard for Winterfell. Sansa called the banners. Kara readied her ships. Arya sharpened her blades. And Jon sent ravens to every corner of the north. There would be council again, and perhaps battle. But this time, they faced it together. A pack, unbroken. On the eve of the assembly, Lyanna stood in the godswood, eyes closed, listening. The old gods did not answer, but she felt their presence in the wind, in the cold earth, in the hearts of those who had endured. When dawn broke, she stood on the walls with Jon and Sansa and Arya, looking out over a north bright with banners, alive with courage. The sun rose, silver and strong, burning through the last of the night. Whatever came, Lyanna would meet it as she had always done. Not as a legend, not as a shadow returned from death, but as a stark, fierce and flawed and full of stubborn hope. She lifted her head to the wind, feeling the pack at her back, and the world trembling on the cusp of some new story. And when the old magic called again, she was ready.